Hello friends, I'm writer-director C.S.Nag, and in my web series The Golden Age of Hindi Cinema, in the second part today, titled The World of Color, I will talk about the advent of color and how it impacted on the world of art and cinema. The camera and the first still photograph came about and became a reality in 1830. And within 9 years, in 1839, came the first color photograph. At first, color was hand painted on the black and white film strip, and for the next 50 years, the process was perfected using various dyes and tints. In 1890, the Lumiere brothers invented their autochrome system, which used a prism which split light into its three primary colors of red, blue, and green. And it was used for taking very lifelike, realistic still photographs, which people enjoyed for the first time. Although their later invention of the cinematograph was still in black and white. But their rival and the great cinema pioneer, George Méliès, used the techniques of hand painting on film directly, using dyes and tints, to create his cinema wonders, using colors and multiple exposures and dissolves in pioneering science fiction films like A Trip to the Moon in 1902 and Incredible Voyage in 1904. In the early days of modern psychology, the age of Freud and Jung and Adler, it was understood already through optics that we saw through light which affected the rods and the cones of our eyes in different ways, and the rods were responsible for the black and white images, and the cones were responsible for color. And so it was understood that we saw through different parts of the eyes and the brains, and that color affected us differently from black and white, and color affected our emotions, whereas black and white affected our reason and intellect. So we saw black and white and we felt color. That was known. In 1921, Joseph Ball invented Technicolor using a prism and two color film strips of red and green only. But the missing blue made his pictures look unnatural. 8 years later, in 1929, George Eastman, fresh from his success in inventing the sprocket hole Kodak camera, invented his Eastman color using an extra blue plate in addition to the red and green to produce lifelike pictures for the first time. Eastman became a billionaire with his Eastman Kodak company, and his slogan, "You push the button, we do the rest." The art world, of course, was feeling the full impact of these changes. And portrait painting, for example, and landscape painting were no longer as sought after, since the camera could do a better job of reproducing reality in lifelike colors. That led to new art developments of Impressionism, Expressionism, Dadaism, Surrealism, and the rest, all through the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, which revolutionized art through the works of Claude Monet, Jean Renoir, and later the spectacular works of Van Gogh that we admire even today. So the first color movies, The Toll of the Sea and A Blind Bargain in 1922 caused a sensation, coupled with Warner's first color talkie, On with the Show. In 1927, within 10 years, Ardeshir Irani produced India's first talkie, Alamara, and in a short while thereafter came his color film, Kisan Kanya, in 1937. It was based on a story by Manto, and both films were a big success. But the high cost of production, up to rupees 10 lakhs of that era, discouraged producers from taking such risks. But all that changed in America with David C.S.Nag's Gone with the Wind, which created cinema history by winning 8 Oscars and earning an incredible $300 million in that era, which is astronomical in today's terms. C.S.Nag went on to become the biggest movie producer in Hollywood and repeated his success with Rebecca with Hitchcock, and then Spellbound and other great films, and even multiple Oscars with Third Man with Carol Reed. And color became the standard in Hollywood. In 1930s, only 10% of color films were made, and by 1950s, 50% of all films were being shot in color. And that was the great era of Cecil B. DeMille and the great epic films like Ben-Hur and Spartacus and the Ten Commandments and all of those absolutely mega hits that ruled the world of cinema. Mehboob Khan took a cue watching these developments in Hollywood and produced his own color film, On, in 1952 and released it in 28 countries, making Dilip Kumar India's first global superstar.
दिल में छुपा के प्यार का तूफान ले चले हम आज अपनी मौत का सामान ले चले मौत का सामान ले चले दिल में छुपा के प्यार का तूफान ले चले.
V. Shantaram at Prabhat followed in its wake and launched his own spectacular dance dramas with dancing star Gopi Krishan in Technicolor. Jhanak Jhanak Payal Baje in 1955 was a big hit with Vasant Desai's music, Amir Khan's classical singing, and Lata and Hemant Kumar's duet, Nain So Nain Nahi Milao.
से मारूं प्रीत का बाण।
Naurang followed in 1959 and was an even bigger hit with songs like Aadha Hai Chandrama, Raat Aadhi and Tu Chupi Hai Kahan by debutant Mahendra Kapoor and C. Ramchandra's music.
आधा है चंद्रमा रात आधी, रह न जाए तेरी मेरी बात आधी, मुलाकात आधी। आधा है चंद्रमा रात आधी, रह न जाए तेरी मेरी बात आधी, मुलाकात आधी। आधा है चंद्रमा।
Dilip Kumar became a superstar by producing his own film Ganga Jamuna as well in 1961, playing the rustic rebel to the hilt. Naushad's hit music with songs like Nain Lad Gayi and Vaijayanti Mala's two great songs दो हंसों का जोड़ा and ढूंढो ढूंढो रे साजना were a hit with the public.
ढूंढो ढूंढो रे साजना, ढूंढो रे साजना, मोरे कान का बाला हो। ढूंढो ढूंढो रे साजना, ढूंढो रे साजना, मोरे कान का बाला।
Ashok Kumar and dancing star Padmini remade Kalpana, which had been made by Uday Shankar earlier, as we saw in the first episode. And that was a big hit with its music and songs like Tu Hai Mera Prem Devta.
तू है मेरा प्रेम देवता, तू है मेरा प्रेम देवता। इन चरणों की दासी हूँ मैं, मन की प्यास बुझाने आई, मन की प्यास बुझाने आई। अंतर घट तक प्यास हूँ मैं, तू है मेरा प्रेम देवता।
All of these events forced Avara Raj Kapoor and RK to change his image in a hurry from a tramp to a globetrotter in his 70 mm Technicolor magnum opus Sangam in 64.
आवारा हूँ, आवारा हूँ, या गर्दिश में हूँ, आसमान का तारा हूँ। आवारा हूँ। मेरे मन की गंगा और तेरे मन की जमुना का बोल राधा बोल, संगम होगा के नहीं। मेरे मन की गंगा और तेरे मन की जमुना का बोल राधा बोल, संगम होगा के नहीं। अरे बोल राधा बोल, संगम होगा के नहीं।
नहीं, कभी नहीं।
I love you, इश्क है, I love you.
Dev Anand also came out of Guru Dutt's noir influence to get Oscar nomination with his epic film Guide in 1964. to win the hearts and minds of people in stunning color.
गाता रहे मेरा दिल
तू ही मेरी मंजिल,
गाता रहे मेरा दिल तू ही मेरी मंजिल है। कहीं बीते ना ये रातें, कहीं बीते ना ये दिन, कहीं बीते ना ये रातें, कहीं बीते ना ये दिन।
गाता रहे मेरा दिल।
Guide broke new ground in Hindi cinema with S.D. Burman's memorable music and Wahida Rahman's spellbinding dances choreographed by Sohan Lal and picturized by director Vijay Anand to perfection.
पिया तो से नैना लगे रे, नैना लगे रे, जाने क्या हो अब आगे रे। पिया तो से नैना लगे रे, नैना लगे रे, पिया ओ पिया पिया आहा पिया पिया तो से नैना लगे रे, जाने क्या हो अब आगे रे, नैना लगे रे, पिया तो से नैना लगे रे।
Nauketan's hit songs told their own story with innovative sets and staging, as in the Qutub Minar set in Tere Ghar Ke Samne and the bike song in Tere Mere Sapne in 1971.
भंवर करे पुकार, प्यार का राग सुनो, प्यार का राग सुनो रे। दिल का भंवर करे पुकार, प्यार का राग सुनो, प्यार का राग सुनो रे। हे मैंने कसम ली, हे तूने कसम ली, नहीं होंगे जुदा हम।
हे मैंने कसम ली, हे तूने कसम ली, नहीं होंगे जुदा हम। हे मैंने कसम ली।
With Jewel Thief in 1967, Dev Anand reinvented the crime thriller with its hit music and slick action, once again directed by Goldie Anand, which was a big hit with songs like Hoto Pe Aisi Baat, which was a dazzling dance number at the climax of the film by Vaijayantimala.
होठों में ऐसी बात, होठों में ऐसी बात में दबा के चली आई, खुल जाए वही बात तो दुहाई है दुहाई। होठों में ऐसी बात में दबा के चली आई, खुल जाए वही बात तो दुहाई है दुहाई। हाँ रे हाँ, बात जिसमें प्यार तो है, जहर भी है हाय। होठों में ऐसी बात में दबा के चली आई, खुल जाए वही बात तो दुहाई है दुहाई।
He was planning a remake of that in Hollywood and even wooed Shirley MacLaine successfully, who came to India to visit him as Dev Anand's brush with Hollywood continued after his success in luring Pearl Buck in Kite and now Shirley MacLaine in Jewel Thief. He was able to get the nod from David C.S.Nag, who had, remember, produced Gone with the Wind, and he agreed to make a film with Dev Anand with his glamorous wife and the star Jennifer Jones. But all of these projects with Shirley MacLaine and Selznick came to naught because first Selznick died of a heart attack, and then their dates came in the way of MacLaine, and they were working together. He met Vivian Leigh on her visit to India, and also Gregory Peck and Greer Garson, and in fact even invited the great Hollywood director Frank Capra, who visited with him and spent an evening with him at Juhu Beach, where they went swimming. But Hollywood continued to elude Dev Anand, although he was able to make much later a film in the Philippines, The Evil Within, to limited success. Dev Anand's genius came to full flower in the 70s as he became a globe-trotting actor-director exploring the international crime and drug racket in such classics as Prem Pujari, Hare Ram Hare Krishna and Des Pardes, which made him into a cult figure.
घोला जाए फूलों का शबाब, उसमें फिर मिलाई जाए थोड़ी सी शराब, होगा यूं नशा जो तैयार, हाँ होगा यूं नशा जो तैयार, वो प्यार है शोखियों में घोला जाए फूलों का शबाब, उसमें फिर मिलाई जाए थोड़ी सी शराब, होगा यूं नशा जो तैयार, वो प्यार है शोखियों में घोला जाए फूलों का शबाब।
फूलों के रंग से दिल की कलम से तुझको लिखी रोज पाती, कैसे बताऊं किस किस तरह से पल पल मुझे तू सताती। हाँ इतना मधुर इतना मधुर तेरा मेरा प्यार, लेना होगा जन्म हमें कई कई बार।
सर्दी में जब पियोगे यारो, सर्दी में जब पियोगे यारो, गरम कोट बन जाएगा ये। आई गर्मी तो मदिरा जल ठंडक तुमको पहुंचाएगा। अरे रंग भरेगा सपनों में, आंखों में जब ये बस जाएगा, मन को तेरे मीत तेरा बस यहीं कहीं पे मिल जाएगा। काहे को तू फिरे अकेला, अरे काहे को तू फिरे अकेला, देख जरा मौजों का मेला, तू भी आ लहरा, अरे आओ ना अकेले कभी, रहो ना अकेले कभी, सभी से ये कहे ये कवि के ऊपर नीचे आगे पीछे छाई कैसी मस्ती जरा भी और जी कहता ये टोनी। Come on, madam. Come on, mister. Have baka. आओ, brother. अरे आओ ना, sister. बोलो cheers.
The advent of color and cinemascope used so well in Guru Dutt and Kagaz Ke Phool in the 1950s and in Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns in the 60s also became a cheap formula to bank on quick success. In films like Love in Tokyo, Night in London, and An Evening in Paris.
आज ऐसा मौका फिर कहाँ मिलेगा, हमारे जैसा दिल कहाँ मिलेगा। आओ तुमको दिखलाता हूँ पेरिस की एक रंगी शाम, देखो 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 An evening in Paris।
रात के हम सफर छत के घर को चले, झूमती आ रही है सुबह प्यार की।
देख कर सामने रूप की रोशनी लुटी जा रही है सुबह प्यार की।
The arrival of color TV in India with the Asiad in 1982 brought big time sports which made popular events like the World Cup in cricket, soccer, and the Wimbledon tennis into major attractions for India's teeming millions, which drew them away from the Bollywood box office for the first time in history. With globalization came the Coke, Pepsi, and MTV high-tech revolutions in the 90s. The Star Wars went galactic and even robotic. The OTT platforms and the internet channels have now taken over, with movie halls becoming a casualty of the COVID lockdown. The home consumer has become his own boss with the remote control in his hand, and the giant IMAX screens have shrunk to home theater. And yesterday's Terminators and Avatars have given way to today's recycled superheroes and their clones and clowns who make you feel nostalgic for the golden age of cinema, which was so full of character and charisma. The future, indeed, is not what it used to be.
मैं खोया था आवारा, है दोस्त और सहारा, दुनिया के भंवर में पा लिया किनारा, मिल गया किनारा, हाँ पा लिया किनारा, मैं खोया था। सोच रहा हूँ मैं हूँ क्या, सांसों में छाया क्यों है धुआं, दिल में उठे चिंगारी क्यों, कहीं मैं तो नहीं